The morning sun cast long shadows across the Afghan valley as Lieutenant Jake Morrison adjusted his rifle scope for the third time. His team of 6 Navy SEALs had been tracking a high-value Taliban target for 48 hours through the rugged mountains near the Pakistan border. Intelligence suggested that Commander Khalil Rahman, responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces, was hiding in a small village nestled between 2 steep ridges. Jake wiped the sweat from his forehead as he studied the terrain through his binoculars. The village looked peaceful from their observation point, with children playing in dusty streets and women hanging laundry on rooftops. But Jake knew better than to trust appearances in this part of the world. His years of experience had taught him that danger often wore the mask of normalcy. "Contact ahead," whispered Petty Officer Davis, the team's communications specialist, as he crawled up beside Jake. 3 armed men just entered the house on the eastern edge. "Could be our target." Jake nodded and signaled to his team. They had been waiting for this moment. Months of planning and intelligence gathering had led them to this remote village. Rahman was not just another Taliban commander. He was the architect behind several devastating attacks that had claimed the lives of dozens of American soldiers and countless Afghan civilians. The team began their descent toward the village, moving with the precision and silence that only comes from years of training and combat experience. Each man knew his role perfectly. Sergeant Williams would provide overwatch from the ridge, while Corporal Thompson and Private Martinez would secure the perimeter. Jake Davis and Private Johnson would breach the target building. As they approached the village outskirts, Jake felt the familiar mixture of adrenaline and focus that preceded every mission. He thought briefly of his wife Sarah back in Virginia Beach, who was probably getting their daughter Emma ready for school at this very moment. The contrast between his 2 worlds never failed to strike him, the peaceful suburbia of home and the deadly reality of his current environment. The team reached the edge of the village without incident. Jake checked his watch, 800 hours local time. The plan was to move in quickly, secure Rahman, and extract to the landing zone where a helicopter would be waiting. Simple in concept, but Jake knew that simplicity rarely survived contact with the enemy. Through hand signals, he positioned his men. Williams took up his overwatch position on a small hill overlooking the target house. Thompson and Martinez moved to secure the village's main entry points. Everything was proceeding according to plan until Davis suddenly grabbed Jake's arm. "Sir, we've got a problem," Davis whispered urgently into his radio. "I'm picking up multiple radio transmissions in the area. Sounds like they know we're coming." Jake's heart sank. A compromised mission meant increased danger for his team, and a higher likelihood that their target would slip away. He quickly reassessed their options. They could abort the mission and return to base, but Rahman might not present such an opportunity again. Alternatively, they could proceed with the operation, knowing that they were walking into a potentially deadly trap. "How many transmissions?" Jake asked quietly. "At least 6 different voices, possibly more," Davis replied. "They're coordinating something, but I can't make out all the details through the static." Jake made his decision. They had come too far and invested too much to turn back now. Rahman was responsible for too much bloodshed to let him escape. He signaled to his team to proceed with extreme caution. As they moved toward the target house, Jake noticed that the village had become unnaturally quiet. The children who had been playing moments earlier were nowhere to be seen. The women had disappeared from the rooftops. Even the dogs that typically roamed the streets had vanished. It was as if the entire village was holding its breath. The team reached the target house without opposition, which only increased Jake's sense of unease. In his experience, when everything seemed too easy, it usually meant that the real challenge was yet to come. He positioned his men around the building and prepared to breach the front door. Just as Jake was about to give the signal to move in, Williams's voice crackled through their radio from his overwatch position. "Boss, we've got company. I count at least 20 armed fighters moving in from the North Ridge. They'll have us surrounded in less than 5 minutes." Jake felt his blood run cold. They had walked directly into an ambush. Rahman hadn't been hiding in the village. He had been using it as bait to lure American forces into a trap. Now Jake and his team were caught in the open with enemy fighters closing in from multiple directions. "All positions, this is Morrison." Jake spoke into his radio with forced calm. "We are compromised and surrounded. Prepare for immediate defensive positions. Davis, get on the horn to base and request immediate extraction and air support." As Davis frantically worked his radio, trying to establish contact with their base, Jake could hear the sound of vehicles approaching from the south. The trap was closing around them with frightening speed. His mind raced through their limited options, none of which looked particularly promising. The peaceful village morning had transformed into a nightmare scenario that would test every skill and instinct his team possessed. In the distance, Jake could hear the ominous sound of weapons being prepared for battle. The hunt for Rahman had become a fight for survival, and the odds were rapidly turning against them. The first shots rang out just as Jake's team reached the cover of a low stone wall surrounding the target house. The sharp crack of AK-47 rounds split the morning air, followed immediately by the deeper boom of a heavy machine gun. Jake pressed himself against the wall as bullets chipped away at the ancient stones above his head. Contact front and left flank, Williams reported from his overwatch position. I count 15 fighters advancing from the north ridge. More movement detected on the eastern approach. Jake's mind worked furiously as he assessed their tactical situation. They were outnumbered at least 3-1, with enemy forces moving to surround their position. The stone wall provided temporary cover, but it wouldn't hold against sustained fire for long. Worse yet, they were trapped in the low ground with enemies controlling the high terrain around them. Davis, what's the status on air support? Jake called out as another burst of automatic fire forced him to duck lower behind the wall. No joy, sir, Davis replied, frustration evident in his voice, even over the sound of gunfire. Can't establish contact with base. Something's jamming our communications. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Professional jamming equipment meant this wasn't just a random Taliban patrol. This was a carefully planned operation designed to isolate and eliminate his team. Rahman had anticipated their arrival and prepared accordingly. Williams, I need eyes on R6, Jake ordered. How's our back door looking? Not good, boss. I've got at least 10 fighters moving up from the south. They'll have the village surrounded in less than 2 minutes. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Jake could hear the enemy fighters shouting commands to each other as they coordinated their attack. They were taking their time, knowing that the Americans had nowhere to run. It was a classic hammer and anvil operation. Drive the enemy into a killing zone and then eliminate them at leisure. Thompson's voice came through the radio with barely controlled panic. Sir, they're bringing up an RPG on the eastern approach. We need to move now or we're going to get blown to pieces. Jake knew Thompson was right. Their current position was a death trap, but moving in the open would expose them to fire from multiple directions. They needed a miracle, or at least a major distraction to break the enemy's coordination. All units, listen up, Jake transmitted to his team. We're going to bound back toward the village center. Johnson and Martinez will provide covering fire while Thompson and I move first. Williams, you keep those northern approaches suppressed from your position. Roger that, sir, came the collective response from his team members. Jake took a deep breath and prepared to sprint across the open ground to the next available cover, a small mud brick house about 30 meters away. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would leapfrog from cover to cover, with half the team providing suppressive fire while the other half moved. Ready, set, go, Jake shouted. He and Thompson burst from behind the stone wall at a full sprint as Johnson and Martinez opened fire on the enemy positions. The sound of their M4 carbines mixed with the angry buzz of incoming bullets as Jake ran harder than he had ever run in his life. They made it to the mud house, just as an RPG round exploded against the stone wall they had just vacated. The blast sent chunks of stone flying in all directions and filled the air with choking dust. Jake realized that if they had stayed in their original position for another 30 seconds, they would all be dead. Williams, talk to me, Jake called into his radio as he caught his breath behind the relative safety of the mud walls. Sir, I've got bad news and worse news, Williams replied. The bad news is they're setting up a mortar position on the ridge. The worst news is I count at least 30 fighters now, and more arriving every few minutes. Jake felt the walls closing in around them. Even with their superior training and equipment, 6 Navy SEALs couldn't hold off 30 or more enemy fighters indefinitely. They needed help and they needed it fast. Keep trying that radio, Davis, Jake ordered. We need to get word out about our situation. I'm trying everything, sir, but the jamming is too strong. Whatever equipment they're using is military grade. As if to punctuate the gravity of their situation, the first mortar round landed 50 meters away, sending a shower of dirt and debris raining down on their position. The enemy was methodically tightening the noose, bringing up heavier weapons to finish the job. Jake looked at the faces of his team members. Despite the desperate situation, he saw no fear in their eyes, only grim determination and professional focus. These men had trained for situations exactly like this one. They would fight to the end, but Jake couldn't help wondering if their end was rapidly approaching. The sound of engines grew louder as more enemy vehicles arrived at the village outskirts. Jake estimated they now faced at least 40 armed fighters with heavy weapons support. The mathematical reality was stark. Without immediate support, his team had perhaps 15 minutes before their ammunition ran low, and their position became completely untenable. "Sir," Martinez called out quietly, "I've still got that emergency beacon in my pack. Should I activate it?" Jake considered the option. The emergency beacon would broadcast their location to any coalition forces in the area, but it would also reveal their exact position to the enemy. It was a desperate gamble that could either bring salvation or accelerate their destruction. Another mortar round exploded closer to their position, rattling the mud walls and covering them with dust. The enemy was finding their range. Jake knew they were running out of time and options. Sometimes desperate situations called for desperate measures. Jake made his decision as another mortar round exploded dangerously close to their position, showering them with mud and debris. "Martinez, activate that beacon now," he ordered. "We're out of options." Martinez quickly pulled the emergency beacon from his pack and switched it on. The small device would broadcast their GPS coordinates on multiple military frequencies, alerting any coalition forces within range of their desperate situation. It was their last hope for survival. "Beacon is active, sir," Martinez reported, "broadcasting on all emergency channels." Jake knew the beacon was a double-edged sword. While it might bring help, it also pinpointed their exact location for the enemy. They would need to be ready to move quickly if the situation changed. The intensity of enemy fire increased as more fighters joined the assault. Jake could hear commanders shouting orders in Pashto as they coordinated their attack. The Taliban fighters were being methodical, establishing fields of fire and bringing up their heaviest weapons. They clearly intended to eliminate the American team completely. "Williams, how are you holding up there?" Jake called to his sniper on the ridge. "Getting hot up here, sir," Williams replied between the cracks of his rifle. "They're trying to flank my position. I've dropped 6 tangos, but there are too many of them. I might have to relocate soon." Williams was their ace in the hole. His elevated position and expert marksmanship had been keeping the enemy at bay. If they lost his covering fire, their situation would become truly hopeless. "Negative on the relocation," Jake ordered. "Hold that position as long as possible. You're all that's keeping them from overrunning us." "Roger that, sir. I'll hold until I'm down to my last round." The sound of Williams' rifle continued to echo across the valley as he picked off enemy fighters with deadly precision. Each shot bought the team precious seconds. But Jake could see that even Williams's exceptional skills couldn't hold back the tide indefinitely. Davis suddenly grabbed Jake's arm with excitement. "Sir, I'm getting something on the radio." "Faint signal, but someone's out there." Jake's heart leapt with hope. "Can you make contact?" "Trying now, sir." Davis adjusted his radio settings and spoke into the microphone. Any coalition forces, this is Bravo 6 requesting immediate assistance. We are surrounded and taking heavy fire. Emergency beacon is active." Static filled their headphones for several long moments. Then through the interference came a voice that sounded like it was transmitted from heaven itself. "Bravo 6, this is Guardian Angel. I copy your emergency beacon and situation report." The voice was calm and professional, with a slight southern accent. Jake felt a surge of relief wash over him. Someone had heard their distress call. "Guardian Angel, this is Bravo 6 actual," Jake transmitted. 6 personnel surrounded by approximately 40 enemy fighters with heavy weapons. "We are taking casualties and running low on ammunition. Request immediate air support and extraction." "Bravo 6, I copy your situation. Be advised, I am one shooter currently observing your position from approximately 800 meters southwest. No air assets immediately available, but I'm going to see what I can do to help." Jake was confused. One shooter? That didn't make sense. How could a single person help against 40 enemy fighters? But before he could ask for clarification, the mysterious Guardian Angel continued. "Bravo 6, I need you to mark your exact position with smoke in 60 seconds. After you pop smoke, be ready to move on my signal. I'm going to create some confusion for the bad guys." Jake looked at his team members, seeing the same puzzlement in their faces. They were surrounded by overwhelming enemy forces, and their salvation appeared to be a lone shooter with no air support. It seemed almost impossible, but they had no other options. "Martinez, prep that smoke grenade," Jake ordered. "We'll follow Guardian Angel's lead and see what happens." As Martinez prepared the smoke grenade, the sound of gunfire around their position intensified. The enemy was preparing for their final assault. Jake could see muzzle flashes from multiple directions as Taliban fighters closed in for the kill. "Smoke out," Martinez called as he threw the grenade into the center of their small perimeter. Bright red smoke began billowing up from their position, clearly marking their location for both friend and foe. Jake felt exposed and vulnerable as the smoke rose into the clear morning air, like a beacon announcing their presence to every enemy fighter in the valley. "Guardian Angel, smoke is deployed," Jake transmitted. "I see your smoke. Bravo 6, now watch the magic happen." Suddenly, the character of the battle changed completely. A single rifle shot rang out from somewhere in the distance, and Jake heard an enemy fighter scream in pain. Then another shot and another. Each shot was followed by shouts of confusion and alarm from the enemy positions. "What the hell?" Thompson muttered as he watched through the gaps in their mud wall fortification. The mysterious sniper was systematically targeting enemy leaders and heavy weapons crews with devastating accuracy. Jake watched in amazement as the coordinated enemy assault began to fall apart under the precise fire from their unknown benefactor. "Bravo 6, this is Guardian Angel," came the calm voice over their radio. "Enemy command structure is disrupted. When I give the word, bound north toward the ridgeline. I'll suppress the eastern approaches." Jake couldn't believe what he was witnessing. A single sniper was single-handedly disrupting an enemy force of 40 fighters. The precision and timing of the shots suggested someone with exceptional skill and experience. "Guardian Angel, who are you?" Jake transmitted, his curiosity overcoming military protocol. "Someone who doesn't like to see good men die for no reason," came the reply. "Now get ready to move. You've got about 30 seconds before they figure out where I am." The mysterious sniper's shots continued to ring out with mechanical precision, each one finding its target with deadly accuracy. Jake watched in amazement as enemy fighters who had been advancing confidently just moments before now scrambled for cover, their coordinated assault dissolving into chaos and confusion. "Move now, Bravo 6. Guardian Angel's voice commanded through their radio. "I've got the eastern approach suppressed. Bound to the ridgeline in teams of 2. Jake didn't hesitate. "Johnson, Martinez, you're with me. Thompson, Davis, follow 30 seconds behind. Williams, start moving down from your position to link up with us." The 3 men burst from their cover and sprinted toward the ridgeline as Guardian Angel's rifle continued its deadly work. Jake could hear bullets snapping past them, but the enemy fire was sporadic and poorly aimed. The sniper's intervention had completely disrupted their attackers' coordination. They reached a rocky outcropping halfway up the ridge just as Thompson and Davis began their movement. Jake turned to provide covering fire for his teammates when he noticed something remarkable happening below them. The enemy fighters weren't just confused, they were actually beginning to retreat from some positions. How is one person doing this? Johnson gasped as he caught his breath behind the rocks. Jake shook his head in wonder. In his 15 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. The mysterious Guardian Angel was systematically dismantling an enemy force that outnumbered them by more than 6 to 1. Williams arrived at their position, breathing heavily from his rapid descent from the upper ridge. "Sir, I've been watching this guy work," he said with obvious admiration in his voice. "He's taking shots from at least 4 different positions, moving between them faster than should be possible." "4 positions?" Jake asked, surprised. "Yes, sir. He's been hitting targets from the southwest, then 30 seconds later taking shots from the northwest. The range changes suggest he's covering over 300 meters in less than a minute. Either this guy can fly or there's more than one of them." Davis and Thompson reached their positions safely, completing the team's extraction from the killing zone below. As they regrouped, Jake tried to make sense of what was happening. The mysterious Guardian Angel had appeared out of nowhere and was single-handedly saving their lives, but his identity and capabilities remained completely unknown. "Guardian Angel, this is Bravo 6, Jake transmitted. "All personnel have reached the ridgeline safely. What are your instructions?" "Bravo 6, I need you to continue moving north along the ridge for approximately 500 meters. There's a natural defensive position there where you can hold until extraction arrives." "Roger that. Guardian Angel, can you tell us who you are?" Are you part of a larger unit in the area? There was a long pause before the response came. Let's just say I'm someone who was in the neighborhood and couldn't stand to watch good soldiers get slaughtered. The answer raised more questions than it answered, but Jake decided that curiosity would have to wait. Getting his team to safety was the immediate priority. They began moving along the ridgeline, using the rocky terrain to mask their movement from any remaining enemy forces below. The sound of Guardian Angel's rifle continued to echo across the valley, but less frequently now as the enemy fighters began to withdraw from their forward positions. After 20 minutes of careful movement, they reached the defensive position Guardian Angel had described, a natural bowl in the rocks that provided excellent cover and clear fields of fire in all directions. Jake positioned his team and tried to establish radio contact with their base. "Bravo 6, this is Guardian Angel," came the familiar voice. "You should have communications restored now. I've eliminated the jamming equipment." Davis immediately began working his radio, and within moments had established clear contact with their headquarters. "Bravo Base, this is Bravo 6. We are alive and in a secure position. Request immediate extraction and medical evacuation." "Bravo 6, this is Bravo Base," came the relieved voice of their commander. "Extraction en route. E to 15 minutes. Sit rep on your engagement." Jake took the radio from Davis. "Bravo Base, we encountered heavy resistance and were surrounded by superior forces. Mission was saved by an unknown friendly sniper identifying as Guardian Angel. Request you coordinate with this individual for our extraction." "Bravo 6, we show no other coalition forces in your area. Can you identify this Guardian Angel?" Jake looked at his team members, seeing the same confusion reflected in their faces. "Negative, Bravo Base. Guardian Angel appears to be operating independently." As if summoned by their conversation, Guardian Angel's voice came through their radio again. "Bravo 6, your ride is inbound. LZ is clear and secure. It's been an honor working with you boys." "Guardian Angel, wait," Jake transmitted urgently. "We need to debrief you. Can you link up with us for extraction?" "Negative, Bravo 6, I've got other business to attend to. You take care of yourselves." In the distance, Jake could hear the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors approaching their position. Their extraction was arriving right on schedule, but their mysterious savior seemed determined to disappear as suddenly as he had appeared. Williams, who had been scanning the surrounding terrain with his binoculars, suddenly pointed toward a ridgeline about a kilometer away. "Sir, I think I see him." Jake grabbed the binoculars and looked in the direction Williams indicated. On the distant ridge, barely visible against the rocky background, was the silhouette of a single figure. Even at that range, Jake could see that the person was carrying a long rifle and moving with the fluid grace of a professional soldier. "Guardian Angel, this is Bravo 6, Jake transmitted one last time. "Thank you for saving our lives. We owe you everything." "You don't owe me anything," came the reply. "Just make sure you get home safe to your families. That's payment enough." The distant figure raised one hand in a brief salute, then disappeared behind the ridgeline. Jake continued to scan the area with his binoculars, but Guardian Angel had vanished as completely as if he had never existed. The extraction helicopter appeared over the ridgeline and began its approach to their position. Jake's team prepared for pickup, but his mind remained focused on the mysterious sniper who had saved their lives. Who was this person, and why had he risked everything to help a team of strangers? 3 weeks after the incident, Jake sat in the debriefing room at Bagram Air Base, facing a panel of intelligence officers and senior military personnel. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Colonel Mitchell, the base commander, reviewed the mission report for the third time. "Let me understand this correctly. Lieutenant Morrison," Colonel Mitchell said, leaning back in his chair, "your team was saved by a lone sniper who identified himself only as Guardian Angel, demonstrated exceptional marksmanship and tactical awareness, then disappeared without leaving any trace of his identity." "That's correct, sir," Jake replied. "Guardian Angel eliminated approximately 15 enemy fighters, disrupted their jamming equipment, and provided tactical guidance that enabled our successful extraction." Major Phillips, the intelligence officer, looked up from his notes with obvious skepticism. "Lieutenant, we've conducted extensive analysis of radio intercepts, satellite imagery, and drone footage from that day. We can find no evidence of any coalition forces operating in that sector, other than your team." Jake had expected this response. The mystery of Guardian Angel had been bothering him for weeks. His team had submitted detailed statements about the incident, but their accounts seemed to raise more questions than they answered. "Sir, with respect, 6 trained Navy SEALs didn't imagine this person," Jake said firmly. "Guardian Angel saved our lives. He demonstrated capabilities and knowledge that suggest extensive military training and combat experience." Captain Rodriguez, the Special Operations Liaison, leaned forward. "Morrison, we're not questioning your team's credibility. We're trying to understand how someone with those capabilities could operate in that area without our knowledge." Sergeant Williams, who had accompanied Jake to the debriefing, cleared his throat. "Sir, if I may add something. During the engagement, I observed Guardian Angel's shooting patterns and tactics. This person was using advanced techniques that are only taught to specialized military units. The precision shooting, the rapid position changes, the ability to identify and eliminate key targets. This wasn't some local fighter or militia member." Colonel Mitchell exchanged glances with Major Phillips. "Sergeant, in your professional opinion, what kind of training would someone need to perform the actions you witnessed?" "Sir, based on what I observed, Guardian Angel had training equivalent to or exceeding our own special operations standards. The accuracy at long range, the tactical decision-making, the communication protocols. Everything suggested someone with extensive experience in asymmetric warfare." Jake could see the wheels turning in the officers' minds. The possibility that an unidentified special operations asset was operating in their area of responsibility without coordination was deeply troubling from a command perspective. "Gentlemen," Major Phillips said finally, "we've reached out to all Allied forces operating in Afghanistan. The British SAS, Canadian JTF-2, Australian SASR, and every other special operations unit in theater. None of them have any personnel operating independently in that sector." "What about CIA or other intelligence assets?" Jake asked. "We've checked with all relevant agencies. No one claims responsibility for Guardian Angel." The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the implications. An unknown operative with exceptional capabilities had intervened in a military operation, saved American lives, then vanished without a trace. It was the kind of situation that kept intelligence officers awake at night. Colonel Mitchell closed the file in front of him. "Lieutenant Morrison, I want you and your team to know that regardless of Guardian Angel's identity, your mission report has been classified at the highest levels. The existence of this individual is now a matter of national security. Sir, what about our attempts to locate Guardian Angel? We owe this person our lives. Lieutenant, I understand your feelings, but our investigation has reached its limits. We've analyzed every piece of intelligence available, and Guardian Angel remains a ghost. For all practical purposes, this person doesn't exist in any of our systems." As the debriefing concluded, Jake felt a mixture of frustration and admiration. Whoever Guardian Angel was, he had managed to operate completely outside the extensive surveillance and intelligence networks of the coalition forces. That level of operational security suggested someone with exceptional training and resources. Walking back to his quarters, Jake was joined by Sergeant Williams. They walked in silence for several minutes before Williams spoke. "Sir, what if Guardian Angel isn't active military?" Jake looked at his teammate with interest. "What do you mean? What if he's former military? Someone who served, got out, but stayed in the area for personal reasons? That would explain why he's not in any current military databases." The idea intrigued Jake. Afghanistan had a way of getting under some soldiers' skin. He had met veterans who couldn't seem to leave the country behind, who found purpose in the chaos and danger that others desperately wanted to escape. "That's possible," Jake said thoughtfully. "But why would a veteran be operating alone in Taliban territory? And where would he get the equipment and intelligence needed for that kind of mission?" Williams shrugged. "Maybe he has his own reasons for being there. Maybe he's been watching out for coalition forces in his own way." That evening, Jake called his wife Sarah from the base communications center. After the usual exchange about family news and his daughter's school activities, Sarah's voice took on a more serious tone. "Jake, I've been reading the news reports about increased Taliban activity in your area. Are you being careful out there?" Jake thought about Guardian Angel and the mysterious person who had risked everything to save his team. "Sarah, there are still good people in the world who look out for each other. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places." "What do you mean?" Jake realized he couldn't tell her about Guardian Angel due to the classification restrictions. "Nothing specific, honey. Just that we're not alone out here, even when it feels like we are." After ending the call, Jake walked outside and looked up at the star-filled Afghan sky. Somewhere out there, Guardian Angel was probably still watching, still protecting coalition forces in his own mysterious way. Jake found comfort in that thought, even though he might never know the truth about the person who had saved his life. The mystery of Guardian Angel would remain unsolved, but the impact of his actions would stay with Jake's team forever. Sometimes the most important battles were fought by unknown heroes who asked for nothing in return, except the knowledge that they had done the right thing. 6 months had passed since the Guardian Angel incident, and Jake Morrison found himself once again in Afghanistan. But this time, his mission was different. He had volunteered for a special task force dedicated to investigating unusual military incidents and potential security threats. The Guardian Angel case had become his obsession, and his superiors had recognized his unique insight into the situation. Jake's new assignment had brought him to a remote forward operating base near the Pakistan border, where reports of similar mysterious interventions had begun to surface. 3 separate incidents over the past 2 months had followed the same pattern: coalition forces in distress, a lone sniper providing crucial assistance, then vanishing without identification. Lieutenant Morrison called Captain Sarah Chen, the task force intelligence analyst, as Jake entered the operations tent. "I think we found something you need to see." Jake approached the table where Chen had spread out satellite photographs and radio intercept transcripts. The materials looked similar to dozens of other reports he had reviewed, but Chen's excitement suggested something significant. "What do you have, Captain?" 3 days ago, a Canadian patrol was ambushed near the village of Kandahar. Same story: overwhelming enemy force, mysterious sniper intervention, successful extraction. But this time we got lucky. Chen pointed to a high-resolution satellite image showing a mountainous region with several marked positions. "Our surveillance drone captured thermal imagery of the engagement." "Look at this." Jake studied the image carefully. The thermal signatures showed the Canadian patrol's position, clearly marked in blue, with red signatures indicating enemy fighters surrounding them. But off to one side, barely visible against the rocky terrain, was a single white signature moving with purpose between multiple elevated positions. "Guardian Angel?" Jake asked. "Has to be. But here's the interesting part." Chen pulled out another photograph, this one taken from a different angle. "After the engagement ended and the Canadians were extracted, our drone continued monitoring the area. Watch this sequence." She showed Jake a series of time-stamped images taken 15 minutes apart. In the first image, the lone thermal signature was visible near the engagement site. In subsequent images, the signature moved steadily southwest, following what appeared to be a well-planned route through the mountains. "Captain, where does that route lead?" Chen smiled. "That's what took us 3 days to figure out. The route leads to an abandoned Soviet-era observation post about 12 kilometers from the engagement site. It's been empty since the 1980s, but guess what we found when we analyzed recent satellite imagery of that location?" Jake felt his pulse quicken. "What?" "Thermal signatures indicating recent human activity. Someone has been using that observation post as a base of operations." Jake studied the intelligence materials with growing excitement. After 6 months of investigation, they finally had a potential lead on Guardian Angel's location. But he also felt a nagging concern about the implications of actually finding their mysterious benefactor. "Captain, what's the tactical situation around that observation post?" "Isolated but defensible. The location provides excellent visibility across 3 major valleys, including 2 primary infiltration routes used by Taliban forces. If someone wanted to monitor coalition movements and enemy activity simultaneously, it would be an ideal position." Jake nodded thoughtfully. The choice of location reinforced his growing belief that Guardian Angel was someone with extensive military training and tactical expertise. Only a professional would recognize the strategic value of such a position. "Captain, I need to visit that observation post." Chen looked concerned. "Sir, that's deep in hostile territory. We'd need a full platoon for security, and that kind of operation would definitely alert Guardian Angel to our investigation. What if we went in small and quiet? Just a reconnaissance team to verify if the site is occupied?" "Lieutenant, with respect, that's exactly the kind of operation that got your team in trouble 6 months ago. Guardian Angel saved you once, but we can't count on that happening again." Jake knew Chen was right, but he also knew this might be their only chance to solve the mystery. The thought of finally meeting the person who had saved his team's lives was compelling. But he also wondered if Guardian Angel wanted to remain anonymous for good reasons. That evening, Jake found himself walking the perimeter of the forward operating base. Thinking about the ethical implications of their investigation, Guardian Angel had saved numerous coalition lives over the past months, asking for nothing in return. Did they have the right to expose someone who clearly wanted to remain hidden? His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Major Phillips, who had flown in from Bagram specifically to discuss the Guardian Angel investigation. Lieutenant Morrison, Major Phillips approached with his usual serious expression. I understand you want to investigate the observation post. Yes, sir. It's our best lead on Guardian Angel's identity and location. Major Phillips was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the mountains where Guardian Angel might be watching at that very moment. Lieutenant, what if Guardian Angel doesn't want to be found? What if there are good reasons for this person to remain anonymous? Jake had been wrestling with the same question. Sir, we still need to know who this person is. The security implications alone require investigation. I understand that perspective, but consider this. Guardian Angel has been protecting coalition forces for months without asking for anything in return. This person has demonstrated exceptional capabilities and unwavering loyalty to our mission. Maybe we should focus on the results rather than the identity. Major, what if Guardian Angel is in danger? What if this person needs help or support? Major Phillips smiled slightly. Lieutenant, from what I've read in your reports, Guardian Angel seems quite capable of taking care of himself. As they continued their conversation, neither man noticed the small, red light blinking steadily on a nearby communications antenna, a light that indicated their radio frequencies were being monitored by someone with sophisticated surveillance equipment. Guardian Angel was always watching, always listening, and always one step ahead of those who sought to find him. In the mountains 12 kilometers away, a solitary figure adjusted his headphones and continued monitoring coalition communications, just as he had done every night for the past 2 years. The hunt for his identity was intensifying, but he had expected that eventually. Some secrets were worth protecting, even from those he had sworn to help. Jake Morrison made his decision at dawn. Against direct orders from Major Phillips, he assembled a small reconnaissance team consisting of himself and 2 experienced soldiers, Corporal Lewis, an expert tracker, and Staff Sergeant Kumar, a communications specialist. Their unauthorized mission was to reach the abandoned Soviet observation post and finally confront Guardian Angel. The 3 men moved through the mountainous terrain with extreme caution, using techniques learned through years of special operations training. They followed animal paths and dry riverbeds to minimize their visibility, stopping frequently to scan for threats. The 12-kilometer journey to the observation post took them nearly 6 hours of careful movement. As they approached the final ridge before their target, Jake signaled for the team to halt. Through his binoculars, he could see the crumbling concrete structure of the Soviet-era observation post, perched on a rocky outcropping. The building appeared abandoned, but Jake noticed subtle signs that someone had been maintaining the site. Sir, whispered Corporal Lewis, I can see recent footprints in the soil around the building. Someone's been here within the last 24 hours. Jake felt his heart rate increase. They were close to solving the mystery that had consumed his thoughts for months, but he also felt a growing sense of unease about violating the privacy of someone who had saved countless lives. Kumar, any radio activity from the site? Negative, sir, but I'm detecting some kind of electronic signature. Could be surveillance equipment. As Jake considered their next move, a voice spoke from directly behind them. You gentlemen are a long way from home. All 3 soldiers spun around, weapons ready, to find themselves facing a man in his mid-40s wearing civilian hiking clothes and carrying a rifle that Jake immediately recognized as the same model used by elite military snipers. The man's calm demeanor and professional bearing left no doubt about his identity. Guardian Angel, Jake said, lowering his weapon. The man smiled slightly. That's what you've been calling me. My friends used to call me Marcus. Marcus had the weathered appearance of someone who had spent years in harsh environments. His eyes held the steady gaze of a professional soldier, but Jake also detected a sadness that suggested personal loss or trauma. Marcus, I'm Lieutenant Jake Morrison. You saved my team's lives 6 months ago. I remember. You were hunting Rahman near the Pakistani border. Good operation, poor intelligence about enemy strength. Jake studied Marcus carefully, noting the man's relaxed posture despite being confronted by 3 armed soldiers. Everything about Guardian Angel suggested someone with exceptional training and complete confidence in his abilities. "Marcus, we need to talk. My superiors have questions about your activities in this area." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I figured this conversation would happen eventually. Your people are persistent and I've been getting careless. Will you come back with us? We can provide protection and support." Marcus shook his head. "Lieutenant, I appreciate the offer, but I have my own mission here. One that's been going on for longer than your war." "What mission?" Marcus gestured toward the observation post. 2 years ago, my son David was killed in an IED attack near this location. He was a Marine, 22 years old, serving his 2nd deployment. After his funeral, I came here to see where he died." Jake felt the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fit together. "You stayed." "I stayed because I realized I could honor his memory by protecting other young soldiers like him. I've been watching the coalition forces in this region, providing assistance when needed." Corporal Lewis spoke up. "Sir, how do you operate alone out here? The logistics alone should be impossible." Marcus smiled. 25 years in the Army teaches you a few things about surviving in hostile territory. I have supply caches, safe houses, and a network of local contacts who help me monitor Taliban movements." "Marcus," Jake said, "your skills suggest special operations background." "What unit?" "Delta Force, retired 2 years ago after David's death. I couldn't stay in the Army after losing him, but I couldn't abandon this place either." The conversation was interrupted by Kumar's urgent whisper. "Sir, I'm picking up radio chatter. Taliban patrol approaching from the north, estimated 15 minutes out." Marcus immediately shifted into tactical mode. "Gentlemen, this conversation will have to continue another time. You need to extract immediately." "What about you?" Jake asked. "This is my home now, Lieutenant. I'll be fine." Marcus led them to a concealed path that would take them safely away from the approaching enemy patrol. As they prepared to leave, Jake turned back to the man who had become a legend among coalition forces. "Marcus, will we see you again? As long as there are American soldiers in danger in these mountains, Guardian Angel will be watching." Jake and his team made their way safely back to base, but the encounter with Marcus had left Jake with mixed emotions. He finally understood Guardian Angel's motivation and identity, but he also realized that some missions transcended military structure and official authorization. In his final report, Jake wrote, "Guardian Angel is a retired Delta Force operator conducting unauthorized protective operations in memory of his deceased son. Subject poses no threat to coalition forces and has demonstrated exceptional value in force protection. Recommend no further investigation." Major Phillips read the report with interest, then quietly filed it in a secure classification that ensured it would remain buried in military archives. Some secrets were worth protecting, especially when they involved a father's love for his fallen son. Marcus continued his solitary mission in the Afghan mountains, watching over coalition forces with the dedication of someone who understood the true cost of war. He had found his peace in protecting others, ensuring that no other parent would have to endure the loss he had experienced. Guardian Angel remained in the shadows, a silent protector whose greatest victory was that most of those he saved would never know his name. In a war filled with complexity and moral ambiguity, Marcus had found a simple truth. Love for his son could be transformed into protection for other people's children. Years later, as American forces withdrew from Afghanistan, Marcus disappeared into the mountains one final time. Some say he returned to America to find peace in civilian life. Others believe he remained in Afghanistan, continuing his mission of protection until his final breath. The truth, like the man himself, became another legend whispered among soldiers who understood that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who ask for nothing in return.